The alarm screamed at exactly 5 in the morning. Day opened his eyes and stared at the gray ceiling of his sleeping pod. The metal walls were cold. Everything was always cold. He pushed himself up and climbed out of the narrow bed. Around him, hundreds of other workers were doing the same thing. Nobody spoke. Speaking before work was against the rules. The Valdrine did not like noise from humans. Day pulled on his work uniform. It was the same gray color as everything else in Colony Sector 7. Gray walls, gray floors, gray sky outside the windows. Even the food was gray. He walked to the washing station with the other workers. They moved in lines like machines. The Valdrine liked it when humans acted like machines. Quiet, obedient, broken. At the food hall, Day received his morning ration. A gray paste in a gray bowl. It tasted like nothing, but it kept him alive. That was all the Valdrine cared about. Keep the humans alive enough to work. The work shift began at 6. Day was an engineer. His job was to repair the machines that the Valdrine used to control the colony. Security systems, lock mechanisms, surveillance cameras. He fixed the very things that kept him trapped. The irony was not lost on him. The factory floor was enormous. Thousands of humans worked there, assembling technology they did not understand for aliens who did not care about them. Guards watched from elevated platforms. The guards were Valdrine. Tall, thin creatures with skin like dark metal and eyes that saw everything. Overseer Krell walked between the workstations. He was the commander of this sector. Day had learned to recognize his footsteps, heavy, deliberate, the sound of absolute authority. Day kept his head down and worked. That was the secret to survival. Do not look at the guards. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not remember that you were ever free, but Day did remember. His grandmother had told him stories before she died. Stories about Korea before the Valdrine came, about cities full of light and music, about people who laughed and sang and chose their own paths. Those stories felt like dreams now. Distant and impossible. At noon, a maintenance alert flashed on his work screen. Section D7 had a malfunction in the infrastructure system. Day gathered his tools and headed to the lower levels. The lower levels were older. Parts of the colony had been built on top of the old human city. Sometimes Day could see traces of what had been there before, broken signs in Korean, crumbling walls with faded paint, ghosts of a world that no longer existed. He found the malfunction quickly, a damaged panel on the wall. He began removing the broken pieces, preparing to install a replacement. That was when he saw it. Behind the panel, hidden in the wall, was a small compartment. It was old, human-made, not Valdrine technology. Day's heart started beating faster. Possession of human technology was forbidden. If he was caught with it, he would be executed. No trial, no mercy. Just death. He looked around. No cameras in this section. The Valdrine had not bothered to monitor the old infrastructure. They did not think humans were smart enough to hide anything. Day reached into the compartment. His fingers touched something smooth and cold. He pulled it out carefully, a data chip, and next to it, a small device he recognized from his grandmother's stories, a holographic projector. Ancient technology from before the conquest. He should destroy it. He should report it. He should forget he ever saw it. Instead, he slipped both items into his tool bag. The rest of the day passed like torture. Every time a guard looked his way, Day was certain they knew. Certain they could see the contraband hidden in his bag. But no one stopped him. No one searched him. When the work shift finally ended at 10 at night, Day returned to his pod. He waited until the lights went out. Waited until he could hear the breathing of sleeping workers all around him. Then he took out the projector and the data chip. His hands shook as he inserted the chip. The projector hummed softly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then light flickered in the darkness. A woman appeared. A hologram, translucent and blue. She wore a military uniform that Day had only seen in old pictures. Her face was tired, worn, but her eyes were fierce. The hologram began to speak. Her voice was quiet but clear. She said her name was Commander Yuna. She said she was recording this message before the final battle, 78 years ago. The last days of Free Earth. Day's breath caught in his throat. He leaned closer. Commander Yuna spoke about the resistance, about hidden caches of technology scattered across the planet, about a plan called Project Sunrise, a way to fight back, a way to be free again. She spoke directly to whoever found this message. Her eyes seemed to look right at Dee. She said, "We did not fail. We planted seeds. Do not let them die." The hologram flickered and disappeared. Day sat in the darkness for a long time. His mind was racing. His heart was pounding. Something had broken open inside him. Something he had buried deep and tried to forget. Hope. It was dangerous. It was stupid. It would probably get him killed. But for the first time in his entire life, Day felt something other than resignation. He thought about the people around him. Thousands of humans living like ghosts, working until they died, never fighting, never hoping, never believing things could be different. He thought about his grandmother's stories, about the Korea that used to exist. He thought about Commander Yuna's words. "We planted seeds." Day made a decision. There was someone he trusted, someone who might understand. Her name was Nari. She worked in the medical clinic. She was smart, careful. She had kept him alive once when he got sick and had no ration credits for medicine. If anyone would listen, it would be her. The next day, during the brief meal break, Dai found Nari sitting alone. He sat down across from her. She looked up, surprised. Workers did not usually approach each other without reason. Day leaned forward and spoke quietly. "Just 5 words, I found something. Something important." Nari's eyes narrowed. She studied his face. Then she gave the smallest nod. "After work," she said. "The old tunnels. Be careful." Day nodded and stood up. As he walked away, he felt the weight of the data chip in his pocket. The weight of a dead woman's hope. The weight of a choice that would change everything. The old tunnels ran beneath the colony like veins beneath skin. They were part of the subway system from before the conquest. The Valdrine had sealed most of the entrances, but humans always found ways through the cracks. Day climbed down through a broken ventilation shaft. His feet touched concrete that was older than the colony above, older than the Valdrine occupation. This concrete remembered free humans. Nari was already waiting. She held a small light, the kind workers used for repairs. It cast strange shadows on the tunnel walls. "Show me," she said. Day pulled out the projector and activated it. Commander Yuna appeared between them, speaking her message from 78 years ago. Nari watched in silence. Her face showed nothing, but her hands gripped the light tighter and tighter. When the hologram ended, Nari was quiet for a long time. "This is how people die," she finally said. "Chasing old dreams are how they live," Day replied. Nari looked at him. Her eyes were hard. She had seen too many people die. In the clinic, she watched workers break down from exhaustion. She watched children born sick because their mothers had no food. She watched hope kill more people than despair ever did. But something in Day's face made her pause. Something in Commander Yuna's words echoed in her mind. "We planted seeds, what do you want to do?" she asked. "Find the others," Day said. The message mentioned caches, technology, a plan. If it's real, we need to find it. If it's not real, then nothing changes. We go back to our pods and we die slowly like we were always going to. Nari studied the projector. Old technology, but it worked. Someone had hidden it carefully. Someone had hoped it would be found. "We need help," she said. "People we can trust." Over the next week, they gathered 4 more people. Each one carefully chosen. Each one approached in whispers and shadows. First was Juan. He was older, 45 years. He had been a teacher before the Valdrine made teaching illegal. Now he worked in the waste processing plant. But at night, in hidden rooms, he still taught children. He taught them Korean words. He taught them history. He taught them that humans were more than workers. When Juan saw the hologram, tears ran down his face. "Someone remembered," he whispered. "Someone kept the truth alive." Second was Tae. He was young, only 19. He worked as a scavenger, collecting scrap metal from the forbidden zones. He was fast and fearless and angry at everything. When Day showed him the message, Tae's anger finally found a direction. "Tell me what to do," Tae said. "I'll do it." Third was Soman. She was 26 and worked in communications maintenance. She repaired the equipment that the Valdrine used to monitor the colony, which meant she knew how to listen without being heard. She knew every frequency, every code, every secret. Soman listened to Commander Yuna's message twice. Then she said, "The data chip has more information. Encrypted. Give me 3 days." She worked on it in secret using stolen equipment. On the 3rd night, she gathered them all in the tunnels. "I found it," Sumin said. Her voice was shaking. Project Sunrise. It's real. She spread out papers covered in codes and coordinates. The Resistance hid technology all over Earth. Weapons, communication devices, and something else. Something called a disruption device. What does it do? Nari asked. It shuts down Valdrine security systems, Soman said. All of them at once. If we can build it and activate it, every lock in the colony opens. Every surveillance camera goes dark. Every security grid fails. The group sat in stunned silence. For how long? Day asked. Long enough, Soman replied. If every colony activates one at the same time. There was a long pause. The weight of what she was saying settled over them like snow. Every colony? Juan said quietly. Soman nodded. The plan was always global. Simultaneous uprising. That's why they called it sunrise. When the sun comes up, it lights the whole world at once. They started with the coordinates. The closest cache was in the Forbidden Zone, the ruins of Old Sol. Getting there would be dangerous. Being caught there would mean immediate execution. Tay volunteered immediately. I go there anyway, he said. I know the paths. Day went with him. They left before dawn. The Forbidden Zone was a place where buildings had collapsed during the invasion. The Valdrine had never bothered to clear it. They just built their colony on top and pretended the old world did not exist. But Tay knew the spaces between. The gaps where humans could slip through. They climbed through broken concrete and twisted metal. They crawled through spaces so tight that Day could not breathe. And finally they found it, a door, hidden beneath rubble, sealed with a lock that required a code. Day pulled out the data chip. Soman had found a sequence. He entered it carefully. The lock clicked open. Inside was a room that had been waiting for 78 years. Sealed containers lined the walls. Day opened one with shaking hands. Weapons, human weapons, old but functional. Another container held communication equipment. Another held medical supplies. And in the center of the room was a sealed case with instructions written on top. Disruption device. Assembly required. Tay laughed. It was a sound Day had never heard from him. Not bitter laughter. Not angry laughter. Something new. They were serious, Tay said. They really believed we would find this. They carried everything they could back to the tunnels. It took 3 trips. 3 chances to be caught. But they made it. When the group saw what they had found, the reality of it hit them. This was not a dream, not a fantasy. This was weapons and technology, and a plan that people had died to preserve. But reality brought danger. One of their group, a young man named June, got careless. He was caught with a piece of the technology in his work bag. The guards arrested him immediately. The next day, Overseer Krell made an example of him. All workers were forced to watch as June was executed in the central square. Day stood in the crowd and watched his friend die. He felt Nari's hand grip his arm, holding him back from doing something stupid. That night, they met in the tunnels. The group was shaken, scared. We should stop, Nari said. Before more people die. Tay stood up, his face furious. June died for nothing if we stop now, they argued. Voices rising, years of fear and anger spilling out. Day stood and spoke quietly. Everyone stopped to listen. June knew the risk, Day said. He chose it anyway, just like Commander Yuna chose it, just like the people who hid this technology chose it. They believed we would be worth it, that we would finish what they started. He looked at each of them. We can honor June by living safely, or we can honor him by making his death mean something. By using what he died protecting, Juan was the first to speak. I'm in. Then Soman. Me too. Tay just nodded. Finally, Nari closed her eyes. When she opened them, something had changed. All right, she said. We build the device. We contact the other colonies. And we finish this. In the darkness of the tunnel, surrounded by technology that had waited 78 years to be found, they made a promise to the dead and to themselves. They would not give up. They would not surrender. They would see the sunrise. Building the device took weeks. Every piece had to be assembled in secret. Every connection had to be tested without triggering Valdrine sensors. Soman worked through the nights, her hands steady even when her eyes were red with exhaustion. Juan created a schedule. Different people working different shifts. Never the same pattern twice. The Valdrine watched for patterns. Patterns meant planning. Planning meant rebellion. Day brought materials piece by piece from his workstation. A wire here. A circuit board there, small enough to hide, common enough not to be missed. He was good at being invisible. All humans were. The Valdrine had taught them that, but they needed to think bigger. The plan required every colony to act together, which meant they needed to contact other colonies, other groups, other humans who still remembered how to fight. That was where Borum came in. She was 38 years old and worked in colony logistics. Before the Valdrine tightened their control, she had been a liaison between sectors. She still had access to communication channels that most humans did not know existed. Nari brought her to the tunnels. Borum looked at the equipment they had salvaged, looked at the partially assembled device, looked at the small group of exhausted workers who were betting their lives on a plan from the past. "You're all insane," she said. Then she smiled. "When do we start?" Borum had access to the colony's communication hub. It was dangerous. The Valdrine monitored everything, but Commander Yuna's data chip had codes, encryption methods, ways to hide messages inside normal transmissions. Solman and Borum worked together. They sent out the first message carefully, just a few words, a test to see if anyone was listening. The message said, "Remember sunrise." For 3 days, there was silence. The group began to lose hope. Maybe they were the only ones. Maybe every other cache had been found and destroyed. Maybe they were alone. Then on the 4th day, a message came back. "We remember." It came from Japan. Another colony. Another group who had found their cache. Another set of humans who refused to stay broken. Then more messages came. Australia, Brazil, West Africa, Northern Europe. Every continent. Every colony. Dozens of small groups. Hundreds of people. All finding the same hidden technology. All reading the same message from Commander Yuna. All waiting for someone to make the first move. Day sat in the tunnel, reading the messages on Somin's screen. His hands were shaking. They were not alone. They had never been alone. The resistance spread in whispers, coordinated through encrypted messages. Each group built their own disruption device. Each group prepared. Each group waited for the signal. But the Valdrine were not blind. Overseer Krell noticed changes in the colony. Small things. Efficiency dropping by fractions of a percent. Workers making eye contact with each other. Resources disappearing in quantities too small to prove but too consistent to ignore. He increased security. Random inspections became daily. Surveillance was doubled. Guards patrolled areas they had never bothered with before. The pressure increased. Every day felt like walking on ice that was about to crack. "We need to move faster," Tay said during one meeting. "They're getting suspicious. We need to be careful," Juan countered. "One mistake and everyone dies. They're both right," Nari said quietly. She looked exhausted. She had been treating more injuries lately. Workers being punished for small infractions. The Valdrine were tightening their grip. Day made the decision. "We set a date. 1 month from now. We tell the other colonies. Everyone activates their device at the same time. Midnight. Coordinated across all time zones. What if we're not ready?" someone asked. "Then we get ready," Day said, "because this is our only chance." The message went out to all the colonies. 1 month, midnight. Sunrise begins, every colony confirmed. They would be ready. The final weeks were the hardest. The device was complete, but they needed to position it correctly. It had to be in the colony's central hub. The most secure area, the most watched area, Day volunteered. He had access as an engineer. He could get inside, but getting out would be nearly impossible. "I'll do it," he said. "No," Borum said. "I will." Everyone looked at her. "I have clearance for the hub," she explained. "I can move equipment without being questioned. And I'm old enough to know what I'm trading my life for." Day wanted to argue, but he could see the determination in her eyes. The same determination he had seen in Commander Yuna's hologram. Some people were meant to plant seeds. Some people were meant to water them. 3 days before the planned uprising, Borum carried the device into the central hub. She installed it in a maintenance shaft. She hid it perfectly, but on her way out, a patrol stopped her. Random inspection. They wanted to search her bag. Borum made a choice. She ran. She led the guards away from the hub, away from the device. She ran through corridors she knew better than they did, but there were too many of them. They cornered her in a dead-end hallway. She was arrested, taken to detention. The group learned about it within hours. They met in the tunnels, panicked. "They'll interrogate her," Soman said. "If she talks, they'll find everything." "We should abort," Juan said. "Move the device. Change the plan." Then Soman's hidden communicator crackled. It was Borum. She had managed to activate a small transmitter before they took her equipment. Her voice was steady. Calm. "Don't you dare stop. The device is in place. You have the codes. Finish it." "That's an order," Borum, Nari said, her voice breaking. "We can extract you." "We can—" "No," Borum interrupted. "You can't, and you won't. You'll activate that device at midnight. You'll free this colony, and you'll tell them I chose this. Tell them I was proud to choose this." The transmission ended. The group sat in silence. Tay punched the wall. Juan covered his face. Nari cried quietly. Day stood up. His voice was firm. "We honor her by finishing this. The device is placed. The other colonies are ready. In 72 hours, every lock on this planet fails. We make sure Borum's sacrifice means something." One by one, they nodded. The final 3 days passed like years. Every worker in the colony felt the tension. Something was building. Something was about to break. Overseer Krell walked through the factory floor more often. His eyes scanned the workers, looking for weakness, looking for conspiracy, but he was looking for patterns, for organization, for structure. He did not see the quiet determination, the shared glances, the knowledge spreading through the colony like dawn spreading across the sky. Change was coming. Not from above, not from permission, not from mercy. Change was coming from below, from the tunnels, from the humans who had been pushed down so long that the only direction left was up. At midnight in 3 days, the Valdrine would learn what they should have known all along. You cannot shatter the human spirit. You can only temper it into something stronger. The last day before midnight felt endless. Day went to work like always. He repaired machines like always. He ate his gray rations and kept his head down like always. But everything had changed. Around him, other workers moved through their tasks. Most of them did not know what was coming. The group had kept the plan small. Too many people knowing meant too many chances to be discovered. But some knew. And those who knew had told others they trusted. And those others had whispered to a few more. Like ripples in water. Like roots spreading underground. When midnight came, thousands would be ready. Not everyone, but enough. The work shift ended at 10. Day returned to his pod. He lay on his narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Sleep was impossible. His mind raced through the plan, through everything that could go wrong. What if the device failed? What if the Valdrine had found it? What if the other colonies backed out? What if Borum had died for nothing? He thought about his grandmother, about the stories she had told him, about free Korea, about people who chose their own lives. He thought about Commander Yuna, about her tired eyes and fierce voice. We planted seeds. At 11, Day rose quietly. Other workers in nearby pods were doing the same. Moving in darkness, silent as ghosts, they gathered in the tunnels one last time. The whole group. Day, Nari, Juan, Tay, Somin, and dozens of others who had joined them over the weeks. Juan had written a letter. He read it aloud. A message to his students. A message to the future. "If you are reading this," he had written, "then we succeeded, or we failed and you found this among the ashes. Either way, remember that we tried. Remember that some things are worth dying for. Freedom is one of them." Nari checked the medical supplies they had prepared. Bandages, stolen medications. She knew people would be hurt tonight. She knew some would die, but she also knew that living on your knees was its own kind of death. Tay sharpened a blade. His hands were steady. He was not afraid. He had been angry his whole life. Tonight that anger finally had a purpose. Soman sat at her equipment. She was connected to every other colony. Messages flowed across her screen. Confirmations, final checks. Every group was in position. Every device was ready. At 11:30, she looked up at Day. "Everyone is ready," she said. All of them. Every colony on Earth. Day felt the weight of it. Millions of humans, all making the same choice, all taking the same risk, all refusing to accept captivity as permanent. At 11:45, they distributed the weapons from the cache. Old human guns, salvage tools turned into weapons. Anything that could fight. At 11:50, they moved into position. Different groups throughout the colony. Near the guard stations, near the armories, near the detention cells where Borum was being held. Day stood with Nari and Tai near the central hub. The place where Borum had installed the device. The heart of Valdrine control. Above them, the colony was quiet. Guards patrolled their routes. Surveillance cameras watched empty hallways. The Valdrine were confident, comfortable, certain of their control. They had no idea what was coming. At 11:59, Salmon's voice came through the hidden communicators. 30 seconds. Day's heart pounded. Nari gripped her medical bag. Tay held his blade ready. 20 seconds. Across the world, in every colony, humans waited in darkness, holding weapons, holding hope, holding their breath. 10 seconds. Day thought of everyone who had brought them to this moment. Commander Yuna, Borum, June, his grandmother, all the people who had refused to let humanity die quietly. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, midnight. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Day's heart sank. It had failed. The device did not work. 78 years was too long. The technology was dead. Then every light in the colony went out. Every lock clicked, open, and every surveillance camera stopped recording. Every security grid failed. The Valdrine technology that had controlled Earth for 3 generations simply stopped working. In the darkness, Day heard confused Valdrine voices. Alarm, panic. They did not understand what was happening, but the humans understood. Move, Day said. They had practiced this, planned every step. In the darkness, humans moved with purpose. They knew these corridors. They had cleaned them, maintained them, lived in them for generations. The Valdrine stumbled in confusion. Weapons were distributed. Cell doors were opened. Prisoners flooded out. Borum was among them. She was bruised and exhausted, but her eyes blazed with fierce joy. You did it, she said to Dee. You actually did it. We did it, Day corrected. The uprising spread through the colony like fire. Humans overwhelmed the confused guards. They seized the armories. They took control of the communication centers. They moved together, coordinated, united. It was not revenge. It was reclamation. Overseer Krell tried to reach the command center. He found Day waiting there. Behind Day stood Nari, Tay, Juan, Soman, Borum, and hundreds of other humans. Krell was larger, stronger, trained for combat. But he was alone, and they were many. This is impossible, Krell said. His voice shook. Humans cannot organize, cannot plan, cannot resist. Day stepped forward. His voice was calm, steady. You taught us to survive by being invisible, by working together quietly, by planning without speaking. You taught us everything we needed to defeat you. Krell was disarmed, restrained, locked in the same cells that had held humans. The colony was theirs. Soman activated the communication equipment. Messages flooded in from every colony on Earth: Japan, Australia, Brazil, Africa, Europe, Asia, North America, South America. Every single one reported the same thing: success. The locks had failed. The colonies were free. Soman began broadcasting to the Valdrine fleet in orbit. Day stood before the camera. Behind him stood his people. No longer workers, no longer prisoners. This is Earth, Day said. His voice carried to every Valdrine ship above. We are no longer your subjects. We are no longer your workers. We are free. You have 2 choices: leave peacefully, or learn what humans are truly capable of when we fight for our home. The message was transmitted from every colony, a chorus of human voices, united, unbroken, undeniable. In the command center, Day waited for the response. Nari stood beside him. She took his hand. Whatever happens next, she said quietly, we stood up. We fought back. That matters. Outside the command center, throughout the colony, humans gathered. They looked at each other. Really looked. Not as workers, not as prisoners, but as people who had just done the impossible. Dawn was coming, and for the first time in 3 generations, humans would see it as free people. Dawn came slowly. Light crept across the colony in shades of gold and pink, colors that Day had almost forgotten existed. For 3 generations, the sky had been gray, but now it was beautiful. Day stood on the roof of the command center. Behind him, smoke rose from burning Valdrine installations. the symbols of occupation, the tools of control, all reduced to ash. Below, in the streets, humans moved freely for the first time in living memory. They walked without permission. They spoke without fear. They gathered in groups and nobody stopped them, but freedom came with a cost. The night had not been bloodless. 37 humans had died in the uprising. Hundreds more were injured. Nari and her medical teams worked through the night, saving who they could, mourning those they could not. Among the dead were people Day knew. Workers he had passed in hallways. People who had chosen to fight when the moment came. People who would never see the free world they had died to create. Borum stood beside him on the roof. She had survived her interrogation, survived the night, but she looked older now, tired in a way that sleep would not fix. The Valdrine fleet is still up there, she said, looking at the sky. Day nodded. That was the question. The Valdrine could destroy Earth from orbit. They had the weapons. They had the ships. One command and the whole planet could burn. But hours had passed since the uprising, and no attack had come. Salman called from the communication center. Day, you need to hear this. He went inside. The communication equipment was displaying a message from the Valdrine fleet, an official response to the uprising. Salman played it. The voice was Valdrine, cold, mechanical. But there was something else underneath. Uncertainty. The message said the fleet command was debating. Some wanted to bomb the colonies into submission. Others argued that the cost was too high. Earth was supposed to be a secure resource, a pacified population. The simultaneous uprising across every colony proved that humans were far more organized and dangerous than the Valdrine had believed. The Valdrine were pragmatic. They calculated costs and benefits, and the calculation had changed. They want to negotiate, Soman said. The group gathered in the command center. Day. Nari, Huantai, Borum, Soman, the people who had started this, the people who had risked everything. What do we demand? Tai asked. Everything, Juan said quietly. We demand everything. Complete withdrawal. No conditions. No oversight. Earth belongs to humans. They will never agree to that, Nari said. Then we keep fighting, Borum said. Her voice was steel. We fought for freedom, not for better terms of imprisonment. Day listened to them debate. He thought about what Commander Yuna would say, what his grandmother would say. We tell them the truth, he finally said. We tell them that humans will never accept occupation again, that every generation from now on will resist. That peace is only possible if they leave, and if they choose war instead, we will fight until there is nothing left to fight with. The message was sent. 2 days later, the Valdrine fleet began to withdraw. It was not surrender. It was calculation. The Valdrine had assessed the situation and decided that holding Earth was no longer worth the cost. They left orbit slowly, ship by ship, until the sky was empty of everything except clouds and stars. When the last ship disappeared, the colony erupted in celebration. People poured into the streets. They cried. They laughed. They held each other, but Day felt the weight of what came next. Freedom was just the beginning. The hard part was building something worth keeping. The colony held a memorial service for those who had died. It was the first time in decades that humans had been allowed to mourn their dead openly, to speak their names, to honor their sacrifice. Day stood before the gathered crowd and spoke. He was not a natural speaker, but his words were simple and true. These people died free, he said. They chose to fight. They chose to risk everything, and because of them, we can choose too. We can choose what kind of world we build. We can choose to remember. We can choose to honor them by living the lives they made possible. He quoted Commander Yuna. We did not fail. We planted seeds. The work of rebuilding began immediately. The colony could not function without the Valdrine systems they had destroyed. Soman and her team worked to restore basic services: water, power, communication. Juan reopened his school, this time in the open, in the light. Children came to learn not just survival, but history, culture, language, all the things the Valdrine had tried to erase. On the first day, Juan taught them a single word in Korean. Freedom. Nari organized medical care for everyone who needed it. No more ration credits. No more choosing who deserved treatment. Everyone received care. It was a small thing, but it mattered. Tay joined the team searching for more hidden caches. Commander Yuna's resistance had left supplies all over the world. Technology, knowledge, tools for rebuilding. Every cache they found was a gift from the past to the future. Borum worked with other colonies to establish communication networks. Earth was free but isolated. Different regions needed to coordinate. To share resources, to help each other rebuild, it was hard work. Exhausting work. But it was their work. Their choice. 2 months after the uprising, Day stood on the same hill where he had watched the dawn. Nari joined him. They had not had much time to talk. Everyone had been too busy, too focused on survival. "Do you think it will last?" Nari asked. The Freedom Day considered the question. "I think we will have to keep choosing it. Every day. Freedom is not something you win once and keep forever. It is something you build and protect and pass on." Nari smiled. "That is very wise." "I stole it from Juan," Dai admitted. They watched the colony below. It was different now, louder, messier. People argued about how to organize things, what rules to have, what kind of society to build. It was chaotic. But it was theirs. Children ran through the streets. That was new. Children playing, laughing, running freely without permission. Day watched them. Those children had been born into captivity. But they would grow up free. They would never know what it felt like to be property, to be controlled, to be broken. That made everything worth it. "What are you thinking?" Nari asked. "I am thinking about Commander Yuna's message," Day said. "About seeds. We found the seeds she planted. We watered them with our choices, our risks, our sacrifices. And now they are growing." He paused. "And someday when we are gone, those children will plant their own seeds. They will pass on what we gave them. Freedom, memory, the knowledge that humans cannot be broken, only bent. And when we unbend, we are stronger than before." Nari took his hand. "I am glad we tried," she said quietly, "even if it had failed." "I'm glad we tried, me too," Day said. The sun rose higher. Light spread across the colony, across the world, across every place where humans had chosen to stand up, chosen to fight, chosen to be free. The Valdrine had tried to shatter the human spirit. They had tried for 3 generations. They had used fear and control and systematic erasure, but by dawn every lock had failed. Not because the technology was weak, but because the human spirit was strong. Stronger than chains, stronger than fear, stronger than decades of oppression. Dai and Nari walked down the hill together. Back to the work of building. Back to the messy, difficult, beautiful work of freedom. Behind them, the sun continued to rise, and across Earth, millions of humans who had been workers became people. People who remembered. People who chose. People who would never, ever stop fighting for the right to be free.